Folks, next week in Charlotte, be a critically important festival taking place dealing with this whole intersection of immigrant rights and also race and culture in America. Of course, it is being led by Emerging US, a website created by this guy, Jose Antonio Vargas, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. They got some great things happening there, and so he wanted to come talk about it. Let's get right to it.
Yeah.
What's up, man?
Thank you so much for having me.
So, first of all, we had you on before, but for folks who don't know what Emerging US is.
Yes. So Emerging US is actually a production company that we produce video content and films on race, immigration, and identity. And next week, the Define American Film Festival, which is headed by an organization that I help lead, Define American, which is all about immigration in America. So we're hosting this 3-day film festival at the Harvey Gantt Center for African American Arts and Culture. And again, that's to be very intentional about the intersection of these issues. So North Carolina in the past 25 years has added about 750,000 new immigrants, documented and undocumented. This is a state that voted for President Trump. And we thought it's really important to bring immigrants and bring kind of how these issues naturally intersect to a place like Charlotte. Because, usually film festivals happen in big urban, progressive liberal cities, right? New York,
Los Angeles,
LA, Chicago,
Miami,
So actually last year we did this film festival in Iowa, in Des Moines, before the Iowa caucus. This year in Charlotte. Next year we're probably gonna pick another place in the South or the Midwest. But I think one issue, and you and I talk a lot about this, is how for the most part, I was on Fox News last night, I just said to you off air, far too often people just think of immigration as a Latino, Mexican, brown issue.
Right.
They're not talking about the fact that undocumented Asians are actually the fastest growing undocumented population. 1 out of 7 Koreans in this country is here illegally, 1 out of 7. And undocumented black people, right? The fact that undocumented black immigrants are far more detained and deported than any other racial group in the immigrant community is just not a fact that people know.
Well, it's also quite interesting. So Bill Maher yesterday gets an interview where he talked about how during this campaign, Democrats made whites feel like they were a minority in this country, and then they should sort of ease up on identity politics. You did a documentary dealing with called White America, where you really
and we're showing it
right to the issue. So, folks, let's play that clip and we'll come back. That's a VO. I'm sorry, I thought we had sound there. Please remind them, folks, that we need sound when the clip. I don't need just a video, please. Thank you very much. So Jose, and so it's interesting. I'm gonna deal with Bill Maher's comments tomorrow because I have a commentary for him because this is the problem I'm having. It's as if black folks, Latinos, Asians, immigrants, it's like we have to make whites in America feel comfortable for demanding full rights and freedom.
Well, why is it identity politics when it relates to us, and why is it just quote-unquote politics when it relates to white people, right? I mean, I think that's such an interesting, and this idea that they're quote-unquote the minority. They are the minority. I mean, we did that film for MTV because for the first time in American public schools from K to 12, white students are in the minority. That's a big conversation, right? And that's why I think coming to a place like Charlotte, having this at the premier African American museum, showing the fact that race and immigration intersect in this country, right? It wasn't until 1790 that we came up with the first citizenship laws, and the only people who were allowed to be U.S. citizens were free white people of good moral character. Alicia Garza, one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, says the Black Lives Matter movement is about citizenship, not about citizenship as papers, but citizenship as dignity, right? I just think it's really important, you hear a lot of talk, especially within progressive circles, about intersectionality, but what does that look like on the ground?
Right.
What does it actually mean for Asians and Latinos and immigrant communities to show up for Black Lives Matter protests? What does it mean for Black Lives Matter protests and for Black Americans in general to know that immigrant communities have their back? Right? And what does that look like? So for us, this festival is about that.
Well, see, it was interesting you made that point. It was one of the points I made several years ago with our Sunday show, Washington Watch, when we were talking about immigration. When I had my show in WVON in Chicago, when this came up, it was 9 out of 10 who were saying send them back. Donald Trump played on that issue, especially to black men, which it was a 9-point difference between black men and black women voting for Hillary Clinton, the same 9 points for Obama in 2012. And I kept telling various folks, look, you had better talk about this whole immigration issue and not forget those folks who are coming from West Indian countries, coming from Bermuda, coming from Haiti as well, coming from African nations, because that's a part of the conversation.
That's right. Well, I mean, you know, whiteness is weaponized. It's weaponized citizenship. I mean, look at what happens in...
Drop the bomb here.
Well, I mean, here it is. I mean, Harvey Gantt, remember he was mayor of Charlotte and ran for Senate in North Carolina. Jesse Helms weaponized whiteness to keep him out of the United States Senate. So it's very fitting you have that.
It was a Cuban-American, Alex Castellanos, who was responsible for that ad of him sort of the white hand crumpling the paper because they're all losing jobs because of blacks.
Of course, and Castellanos, again, even though he is Latino, hiding behind his white Latino identity. Again, weaponized identity. I mean, this is so important, Brother Vargas. And you, again, you're right on it, Roland. When you start talking about America, there is no American identity.
I mean, that's why, literally, the film festival, the question is, how do you define America?
That's right.
Is it papers? Is it laws?
I mean...
It's culture, man.
Kim?
First of all,
I'm sorry, Sue.
My name's Sue.
I'm sorry. Baby, it's no different than when I call Andrew Eugene. I'm sorry.
Okay. But, you know, I have a definition of what it means to be American. I mean, I'm an immigrant. I was born in Taiwan, a country with a democratically elected president. It's
Taiwan, China, go ahead.
No, it's an independent country that recognizes gay marriage and has a democratic system, by the way. It's a separate country than China. But, I was born there. We came over because my dad was allowed to get a PhD in quantum physics, so on the type of visa that required people to study only certain topics. But the thing is, we moved here. I lived in government housing for the first year because we had literally zero money. My parents couldn't speak English that well. And we worked ourselves, my parents worked ourselves out of that and became very successful middle-class Americans. And to me, that is the definition of being American.
This dignity piece is so important that you pull out here. I mean, this notion that you got to be a superstar if you're a person of color to be valid here.
Why do you have
hey,
too?
Or in the case of Jordan, all the stories, he was an honor student who was killed. It doesn't matter whether you're an honor student or you were a dropout. You shouldn't be killed.
Right, that's absolutely right. We got to recognize the humanity of folks and the dignity of folks.
I just have to say, you brought up a really interesting point. So here's President Trump, who, when he was campaigning for president, says, it's not a surprise that Trump ran on immigration as the central part of the campaign.
Right.
And he kept looking at black people saying, wait a second, these immigrants are taking your jobs. Like, he has created, I think, effectively a wedge. So now what is our job? To say, wait a second, not here.
Well, I mean, part of it is, Loran Matori writes about this. Everybody wants to escape what he calls last place anxiety. Blackness is at the bottom of American identity. That's why when you said, Roland, the Caribbean and continental African immigrants are invisible. But nobody talks about it.
I have to say, by the way,
but here, go ahead.
Right now, if you're watching this, Black Alliance for Just Immigration is a really, really important group that does this work. Actually, at the film festival, we're showing a documentary called Am I Too African to Be American, or Am American to Be African? And one of the panelists is the guy who co-founded the Black movement, an undocumented Black movement. So he's going to be there for that. So we're being really intentional. Brittany Packnett at Campaign Zero is going to be there on opening night on May 11th with Dolores Huerta, and talking about what does it mean to be a woman of color organizer at a time like this. So look, as an undocumented person, going to Charlotte may not be the best idea for me, but John Lewis said, right? You're a walking uncomfortable conversation, Jose. You should go where you're not welcome.
The thing here that I think that mainstream media does not want to touch, and most people don't want to deal with, and I've been saying this since 2009 in the election of Obama, we are dealing with white fear.
That's right. Doesn't
mean all white Americans. But we're dealing with, even individuals say, oh, no, that's not what it is. There is fear. There's fear, this whole belief that, no, our values are not going to be the new American values when, first of all, you don't have your values. You can't say we're a nation of immigrants, and all of a sudden you say, here's the American identity, because you're right. To be white, to be from Europe, to be black, African American, born here or from out of the country, to be from Taiwan, to be from Singapore, Thailand, or China, or any other country, you come here, you're an American, but we can all celebrate that. This is white fear. When you say Trump knows exactly what he's doing.
Oh, absolutely.
When he's because you have white Americans in these Midwestern states and others who believe I am losing my job because of them. You have people who are saying, Sue, I can't get a job because of your daddy. And see, these things are happening, and I keep telling people, unless media deals with white fear.
That's right.
And we're going to be dealing with this, and I keep telling folks, for the next 30 years, because by 2044, that will be the first time in American history that no one group will be a majority of this country. This is not a 4-year issue, the next election. This is a 30-year issue.
And the fact that I think we are living through a civil war and a reconstruction all at once.
Yes.
And we do not have a media infrastructure. I mean, outside of your show, outside of like a few exceptions, we don't have a media infrastructure to tell us what is really going on.
That's right.
You know, and I have to say, you know, my idea of America when I got here when I was 12, 16, 17 years old was James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, and Maya Angelou, right? So when I found out that I was here illegally when I was 16, knowing that I was this illegal person, if I hadn't read those writers when I was a kid, I'm not sure I would have given myself permission to exist in America. That's why it means a lot to me to hold this film festival at an African American museum. It means a lot to me that Melissa Harris Perry is going to moderate the last panel. It means a lot to me to just bring these people together and say, this is the conversation today. Never mind Republican or Democrat, never mind whatever the politics are. How do you define America?
And of course, I would have been there, but I got to be at the Emmett Smith Celebrity Gala. I already gave them my commitment.
Yeah.
But Jose,
thank you so
good
much.
luck with it. Always good having you on the show, man. A peaceful protest turned deadly. 37-year-old black man was shot and killed by Baton Rouge police. His hands are in the air, and you still get shot by the cops.
Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead.
We're not going to let hate define us.
Race is a big part of this.
If truly all lives matter, then all lives need to matter equally.
What we require is action. What we require is accountability. We understand that black lives do matter, and we will keep focused on this issue.
News 1 Now, every weekday morning at 7 on TV 1.